Live now.
Hi.
We're live.
We are live, and it's hi, I'm Sarah Beth, and this is Noble Brown, and we are Sociopathletic. And we go live. We just started this last week, and we are going to go live once a week and talk about something that's hot, like today, hot. So our topic for the day, the American Psychological, I have to get that right, Psychological Association latest announcement has singled out a negative masculine characteristics detrimental to a young boy's growth. I am reading off of some of my notes that I've taken because this was a beefy topic. My first reaction was to keep it really simple. You know, I don't have thousands of hours to go and read all the research. I'm not a psychologist, but what was the definition? What is the definition of masculine? And it sent me down a rabbit hole and actually took me to a physical library. They still exist.
There are these publicly funded institutions that your taxpayer dollars have paid for in every town across America. It's called a library. Sometimes they even have Wi-Fi. So you can go in there, you can catch your Pokemons, and then you can pick up these things like what I have behind me that are called books.
And they have computers and workspaces. It's very quiet. So if that's the type of environment you like to work in, I would go check them out. There's actually a lot of libraries. So we went to a physical library and looked at the definition. And what I found across multiple definitions, I did Google, promise you, I did Google, was one common word, which made me positive that I disagree with the APA. And I'm not the only one. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First, I want to review what others are saying about this, because we saw lots of people on Twitter talking about it, a lot of people reacting and being very angry, but I really wanted to know what the scholars were talking about. So Franklin, you went and read about some scholars' reactions to this APA. What were they saying?
I did. So credit to Jack Murphy, who was at Jack Murphy Live. He did all my homework for me. I mean, way to go. Thank you, Jack.
Cheater.
I good artists, what is it? Good artists imitate, great artists steal.
Oh, okay.
So that's the phrase.
Confession.
So found a couple of interesting sources here. Probably the strongest one, or one of the strongest ones, was by a Dr. Pamela Paresky. And Pamela, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. She is a PhD in human development and psychology from the University of Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Go Bears. And she has a lengthy thread on this. And what I'll do is after the broadcast, I'll share kind of the threads that I found on this, so you guys can go through and read them in detail, because I don't have time to read the whole thing here. But she calls out a couple of things. One, she says, and I quote, "But why label that, quote, traditional masculinity? Why lump together positive traits such as risk-taking, protectiveness, and courage with negative behaviors such as aggression and violence?" So good point there. Why are we doing that? And she concludes, and there's like pages of this stuff, by saying academic and clinical institutions must be ideologically neutral. Ideology must not drive the way clinical problems are framed. And the reason why she's making that point is that it is obvious, if you read the APA guidelines that they just published on masculinity, it's not a scientific document. It's a political document.
How many pages?
It's like small print, multiple columns, like 22 pages of stuff, and it's all cited and so forth. It looks very good. Yeah. But there are some concerns about it, and thank you for asking, because that leads me to my next source here. This is a Professor John P. Wright, who wrote a lengthy opinion on this. And again, I'm just going to call out some highlights, but I will share the full thing so that you can go and read it off yourself, because he cites his sources very well as well, because he's an academic. APA's practice guidelines will make it less likely that men will get the help they need Worse still, if these guidelines are put into therapeutic practice, they may harm boys and men. Evidence of political bias is visible throughout the document. This is what we've been saying. Defining traditional masculinity in negative terms says a lot about their agenda. And there's a whole bunch of this here. I blocked off an entire paragraph, but I don't want to read the whole thing because, again, this could take forever to get through. There's a lot to digest here, but we just want to give you kind of the soup and nuts here. He says, I could go on, but I want to turn to the consequences of labeling traditional men as toxic. Understand that this document carries the weight of scientific authority. It will be used in the training of clinical psychologists. It will be used to justify programs that target boys who show signs of impending traditional masculinity. And it will be used to justify restrictive policies towards men. Think of how universities, especially the diversity czars, will use this, how courts will use this in custody hearings, and how workplace training and policies will be affected. The APA has, in essence, justified, no, it has encouraged discrimination against men who hold traditional views of masculinity. That's pretty strong, in my opinion, and that's a big concern. So yeah, there have been a number of sources. I actually found probably close to a dozen. I had to cherry pick these few, but it's out there if you want to read up on it. And obviously feel free to reach out to either one of us if you want to talk further about it, but it's a legitimate concern because of the weight that the organization brings to bear as the quote unquote American Psychological Association. They will be cited as an expert source on this when in fact the document is just a political agenda.
Which is really too bad.
It is unfortunate because like the professor was trying to say is that, you know, there are legitimate needs that men need help. And it would be good for the APA to publish guidelines that could help with that, because the state of American psychology is a moving target. You need to have professional organizations and learned doctors publishing helpful material on a regular basis. This does not qualify as helpful material, unfortunately.
Well, that's too bad. And I also, when I read about this, very slightly, I did not go into the detail that frankly, we look at things differently, which is why this is why we're here. I wanted to know, how are we defining masculinity? So I went to Google, as many people do. I went to Google, and the first result, the definition, it doesn't really give you a source. It just kind of tells you what it is. So it said, having qualities or appearance traditionally associated with men, especially strength and aggressiveness. And I saw aggressiveness and I thought, really? I was kind of surprised about that. So I scrolled a little more because, you know, our Urban Dictionary is going to come up. And Urban Dictionary, I believe, is helpful to find out what the pulse of our, you know, younger generations think. I wouldn't say it's an academic's definition, but, and it's not what I go to for that, but for a general pulse, it can be helpful.
It's what you read if you want to be hip and with it.
Hip and cool.
Yeah.
Hip and cool. So if someone's using a word that you don't understand it in the context they're using it, go to Urban Dictionary. They're probably saying something that you don't.
If they're under the age of 30 and they're talking like a different language, but it sounds like English, then you probably need Urban Dictionary.
Exactly. So in 2003, this was added to Urban Dictionary, positively characterized as qualities that are strong, community building, utilitarian, practical, negatively characterized as too aggressive, violent, and uncaring. Okay. 2005, often defined as aggressive, strong, unfeeling, stoic. Being masculine is modern times, at least. No shows of emotion, no flamboyance, no hugging, or even looking at other men. Must be interested in sports that are physical and violent activity. Yes. But you don't shy away from looking at other men or or I don't know, like in men's sports, they pat each other on the butt. Isn't that kind of a hug?
It was totally fine until Jerry Sandusky came along.
Okay.
But
I mean, there is there's emotion. It's different. You show emotion differently than I do.
Well, and some of these things don't necessarily, they're calling it negative. Shout out to Paul Dominic if he's watching. If they told you that stoicism was a negative trait, what would you have to say about that, Paul?
Seriously,
I think Paul would throw hands.
So
engage in violent activity.
I was still confused, which led me to the physical library.
Now, why did you go to the physical library? Why go through all that trouble? If Urban Dictionary is right there on your computer, why did you walk or drive and then walk into the physical realm of a library? What was the purpose?
Because we wanted to try and get the an older definition. And I'll tell you, we went in and asked for the dictionary, and we were sent to a desk where the librarian was sitting, and she had stuff on top of it, like pens and paper and stuff, and she had to take everything off it. Like it was being used as a prop, because I guess no one looks at the library. No one goes to the dictionary anymore.
Blow the dust off it. It was like something out of Indiana Jones.
I mean,
it belongs in a museum.
So we took pictures of it with our cell phones.
We did.
And basically it said having it was a very lengthy definition, but having the qualities distinctive of or appropriate to a male, virile, robust, manly. And so, again, the commonality across all of these definitions, whether they were good or bad, was strength. And I think that I certainly look to you for strength, and I like that you're a strong man physically and mentally. But strengths are not always physical or mental. You brought up the point of morality, but there's a pendulum of using your strengths for good and using your strengths for evil. And I don't think that's gender specific.
No, it's really not. I think in a lot of ways, men are looked to as like physically strong. But from an ethical and a moral and a personality standpoint, anybody who's, had a 90-year-old grandmother that still runs around and beats you with a frying pan. Strength is not an exclusively masculine trait. It is a masculine trait. It's considered a prerequisite to be called masculine is to be strong. And, unfortunately, people do use their strength for positive and negative ends of that spectrum, whether it's, to do something good and righteous or to do something selfish and evil. And, we like to bring the pendulum illustration into these videos because it's good to look at life, on the extremes and on the average. And on the average, most people are not particularly strong one way or the other. They just kind of walk down the middle. They mind their own business. And the people you see in the videos and every day somebody shares a video like this where, somebody's getting beat up at a McDonald's. And then, half the people are there with their cell phones, taking pictures of it. Wow, look at that. But then there's always one person, and it's not always a guy. I saw a video last week where this large woman came in and beat somebody. Can I say ass on this video?
Sure.
Okay, she beat some ass. And because this guy was like mouthing off or being stupid in a McDonald's. Okay, so on the one hand, you had the jerk being stupid. I don't know what he was doing. He was being rude, or he was, threatening the cashier or whatever. And then you had the employee or the large woman, wherever she came from, being righteous. Like, hey, okay, well, what's the lesson there? Is that the evil strength is only halted by righteous strength. If I can Godwin my own video for a minute here, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party was not stopped because we had a talk over a cup of tea about it. He was stopped because the Allies went in and beat the snot out of him. and that's what it takes. So strength is not a negative thing. Strength can come in all forms. It can come from all genders. Even though there's only two genders, let's not confuse the issue. And it can be used righteously, or it can be used selfishly and for evil. So don't hit on the strength, man. Do your squats. I did squats this morning. I feel pretty good about it, actually.
Yesterday. Or days like day.
That's right.
So yeah, I had to throw that in there. Go girls. So what reward do you get for being the best man you can be, or being that masculine man? What is the reward that you're getting?
Well, I think that's good to mention to people, because that's what I think organizations like the APA and companies that use masculinity in their marketing and so forth should focus upon, is the positive aspects of masculinity. It's a positive feedback loop. You go and whether even let's take the stoicism for example, like a man who can suffer adversity without cracking under the pressure. Well, the benefit of that is that his family, his children see that, and they see the demonstration, like, hey, dad kept it together while all that was going on. Or the man who the fireman who runs into the burning house to save a child. I mean, he doesn't do that for the money. Those guys aren't getting paid enough for that, but the reward is, hey, I saved a child's life, and that child and that child's parents are forever grateful for that. There's all kinds of positive feedback for it, and the more you use your masculine traits in a righteous manner, the more you're going to be rewarded for it. So there's no downside to it. Do the right thing. And
I do feel like there's been a bit of a hate spiral that we've been around this topic of masculine, and it's I don't know how, I'm sure that you're sick of it, but I'm sick of seeing it. It's not doing anyone any good to talk negative all the time.
Especially not when there's so many positive examples, especially in this day and age. There's plenty of us out there, plenty of men that are, first responders, or just, average everyday dads doing their job, that should be shown as the positive example for masculinity. And that's what will help other men. I think we have, several generations in now of men that were raised without positive male role models. Were not held accountable by their male peers for whatever reason. And now, instead of embracing positive masculinity and growing stronger themselves, unfortunately, it's easier for a weak person to break down the strong than it is for the weak person to become strong. And that, I think, is the ultimate agenda here, is that those that don't have positive masculine strength are trying to take the easy way out and say, well, I don't want that because it's not good anyway.
So we don't have a masculinity problem. And I refuse to say the T word, right? Because I feel like we have, anytime you hear masculinity, people, they have word association and they start thinking about that T word. And I don't want to say it because it, but it's unfortunate. So we don't have a masculinity problem. We have a evil problem. We have a mean people problem. And the solution, which is what we usually go to towards the end, is multifold, right? There's a multi-pronged approach. First of all, parents, be strong parents. Do your job. Parenting is not for the weak. Don't be weak.
Don't give your kid the ice cream just because he's crying for it.
It's not ice cream. Men, be role models, be gentlemen, be the best men you can be.
Your kids are watching.
Franklin, what did you make sure that your son knew about being a gentleman?
Well, there's a lot that he still needs to learn about being a gentleman. Showering on a regular basis and that kind of thing is important. But no, in all seriousness, I think the getting back to, using your strength for something righteous. He's a big kid, and it would be very easy for him to adopt the persona of a bully, whether it's bullying his sister or bullying other kids at school and so forth. And he's never done that. But there's been cases where he's been picked on and he's had to fight. And I've always told him, I said, I'm going to tell you the same thing that my dad told me, is that we don't start fights, but you're allowed to finish them. And so if somebody gets physical with you, then you have every right to defend yourself or defend your friends, defend your family. But don't go around picking the fight. I think that's the most important key, is that, it's like Odin said to Thor, is that a wise king never seeks war, but is always prepared for it.
You can always.
It's got to be a movie reference in there somewhere. Well, the kids got to relate, some of these kids don't.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine with me. So, and for those of you questioning, like, where are the positive male role models? And you're looking around and you don't have any. You can go online. You can follow Sociopathletic on Twitter, and they're constantly talking about ways in this corner of Twitter, how to be better people. I mean, I get a lot from following the people in this corner of Twitter. I don't want to go on and list a whole bunch of different names, but there's a lot of good stuff on there, and you can see good role models, and they talk about how they're being fathers, and how to be better men and better people and be productive and such. So it's out there if you're not finding it in your local circle, because you are the product of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So be choosy about who you surround yourself with. And language is important. If you're not sure of a definition of a word, don't use it. And I am not going to go off on the latest word that was misused in the political world, but just know that you need. No,
Even I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't? Okay, I will. I'll mention it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So we don't need to talk about it.
I'm surprised it wasn't trending. I think Twitter did something to like squelch that, because it should have.
But it was honestly, we need. If you don't know the definition of a word, don't use it. Language is important. So, 1, masculinity does not need to be redefined. We just need to use the word more positively. Question what you hear, even if it's the APA. Just because a large organization that has a reputation or has a lot of influence says something, doesn't mean that you need to just believe it or use it. And lastly, teach your sons and daughters to do good, not evil, with their strengths. And that's physically, that's mentally, and that's about it. We always want to focus on positivity.
Right.
You have anything to share? Positive from this?
Yeah, we do.
Stuff?
We do.
Do you?
Yeah, she's so excited about it. So, last week we started kind of we're going to share the solution of the week. What's the solution that we did or that we saw? And the example that I have for you this week is sometimes you got to shoot your shot. I've been plugging my book to anyone that'll listen to it. Sarah Beth printed out these little business cards that have like the book cover on it and the website on the back and all that stuff. It's great. I've got 2 different Twitter accounts that I'm broadcasting it on, but every time somebody mentions a book, like they want to read a book or they're into books, I say, hey, can I get you a copy of my novel? Especially if it's somebody who, has some influence that might be able to get my book in front of more people. And last week, I don't remember what prompted it, but Jocko Willink, who is one of those positive male role models that you guys can follow online.
Gets up at 4:30 and work out
every morning. He's on Instagram. He's on his podcast. He's on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. You can't miss him. He's talking about something, I don't remember what, and I said, hey, can I get you a copy of my novel? And he didn't reply right away, because I guess he gets a lot of Twitter stuff, but like 4 days later, he's like, yeah, sure, send it here, which was mind blowing to me. you know, because he's a extremely busy guy. He's got a lot going on, but he also just started a book publishing company, which is awesome. And you know, so maybe he wants more than just himself as an author for his book publishing company. We don't know. But the point is, he was open to it. Sent him a copy. He should have it in his hands as we speak. So we're excited about that. And I guess the lesson there is don't be afraid to ask. I mean, I'm
What's the worst that can happen?
They can say no. I'm going to throw out another example here, just because I know we're running over time. But like Jose Rosado started a podcast, and he's got all these enormous guests on here. And like most people don't even know who's Jose Rosado. I don't know, but he's getting everybody on his podcast. Everybody. He's killing it. Everybody who's anybody is on his podcast. How is he making that happen? He's just asking. I don't think there's any secret. I mean, Jose, feel free to come on here or invite me on your podcast, because now I feel like I got to be on there because everybody's been on there. Like, why haven't you asked me? He jumped way over me. Like I'm like the low tier. And he jumped way past that. And like he's got like Ivan Throne on his podcast now, and you know, Bobby Dino's on there. I mean, like, Jose, come on, man. So no, you know, I don't know what his secret is, other than I think he's just asking, and people are like, yeah, sure, you know, because people like to help out. He gets after it. He does. He does not sleep. I think he's got a twin, or a robot, and he's running 24 hours a day on his Twitter, and he's producing content. He's got clients. He's working. He did our Twitter banners. Yep. The dude's awesome. So the lesson there, the solution is don't be afraid to ask. It's worked for me. It's working for him. It works for a lot of people. Just get out and ask. We got to go. We're going to wrap this up. So thank you guys for stopping in. We will post some additional notes and resources in the description here shortly, and we will see you next week.